What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Miller, if you like. So let's get into it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We're at 75 subscribers. Sorry, that was my chair as I was leaning up. But we at 75 subscribers. Keep going. Once we get to 100, we'll definitely give something away. So today I wanted to talk about the tight ends on the roster, but also because there's not a lot of tight ends to talk about, I feel like there's only really three. Also going to talk about quarterbacks as well, but we're going to start with the tight ends. So as far as tight ends on the roster, we have Stevenson coming off an injury. I believe we have Fairweather, who they just gave some guarantee money to as far as an undrafted free agent. And I guess maybe you could throw Hunter Lipke into this situation. He's a fullback. He's a tight end. He's a halfback. He kind of does a little bit of everything. Whatever the Cowboys need him to do, he does it. So, you can throw him into that situation as well. But for the most part, I feel like you have a battle between three guys. So you have first, want to get to Brevin Spanford. So a lot of people have been talking about Brevin Spanford and like how amazing he looks in the minicamp, shirts, t-shirts, shorts, whatever have you, and how all of a sudden he might be able to take the number 2 job away from Luke Schoonmaker. I don't see that. I feel like Brevin has a very defined role, so I'm pretty sure he's on the team. But I do believe his role is blocking tight end, right? I feel like he provides the most secure or the highest floor of blocking that you want from that position. So I feel like he's going to be somebody that's a little bit different from everybody else on the roster. And I feel like as far as being the tight end number 3, he's pretty secure in that area. He can block very well. He catches occasionally, but he's not consistent in that area. So I feel like as far as being able to challenge for the 2 or the 1 tight end spot, I don't think that's necessarily his bag. But I think his bag is very well defined, which is why I think he's absolutely making the team. So now if we go a look at the other position, we go to the tight end 2. Now the tight end 2, I think clearly at this point, is Luke Schoonmaker. Luke Schoonmaker is a little bit of blocking, so he has a little bit of what Brevin Spanford brings to the table. But he also has some receiving. So I feel like he's not as good at blocking as Brevin Spanford, and he's not as good at receiving as Jake Ferguson. So I feel like that firmly puts him in that tight end 2 slot, right? He can do a little bit of this. He can do a little bit of that. He's not necessarily great at either one of them, but he's pretty good at both of them. So I do also think that the people that think Luke Schoonmaker is going to be off the roster this year is crazy, because if you take a look at last season, Luke Schoonmaker, by the numbers, by the efficiency numbers, if you go by yards per catch and you go by catch percentage and yards per target and yards per route run, Luke Schoonmaker was actually your most efficient tight end that you had on your roster. So when these people start trying to talk about throwing dirt on Luke Schoonmaker or making it seem like all of a sudden Luke Schoonmaker might be off the roster or he might be your tight end 3, I think that's absurd. I think he was better than Jake Ferguson last year, even though he didn't get as many opportunities. But as far as efficiency numbers are concerned, with the opportunities he did get, he did more with them, even if they were a short amount of opportunities. His numbers actually suggest that you should give him more opportunities. I don't know if the Cowboys are going to do that this year because A, Jake Ferguson has Dak Prescott's trust, and B, Jake Ferguson is in a contract year and the Cowboys have control of Luke Schoonmaker for 2 more years. So as far as what the Cowboys might do, it actually makes more sense for them to give Jake Ferguson all the opportunities this year, every chance they can give him, and let him see what he can do, because if he doesn't prove anything this year, well, already last year you had a more efficient tight end on the roster, and I believe if Jake Ferguson doesn't come out and start to prove things to you early and often, that Luke Schoonmaker will actually start to take over more of those receiving role snaps, considering that he is a better blocker than Jake Ferguson. And if you give him a chance to show his receiving prowess, he might also prove to be a better receiver than Jake Ferguson. On top of you spending a second round pick on him, it makes more sense for Luke Schoonmaker to get more snaps this year. Now, the third guy I want to get into, of course, is Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson was super disappointing last year. And honestly, going into the season right now, if I just had to, you know, put my handicap on it or give him my odds, I feel like Jake Ferguson basically is leaving the Cowboys after this year no matter what, because I wouldn't spend money on a contract for Jake Ferguson no matter what type of year he had, unless he had, like, if Jake Ferguson broke Jason Witten's franchise record, which I think is 113 catches by a tight end, you know what I'm saying, and he had over 1,000 yards and he had 10 touchdowns, I might consider keeping him. But if Jake Ferguson trots out there and he has 50 catches for 775 yards and 4 touchdowns, thank you, but goodbye. I think that's very replaceable. So I think Jake Ferguson basically has to have an all-pro year in order for the Cowboys to even consider keeping him. Now, the flip side of this is the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of times if something makes a lot of sense, they kind of go to the opposite. So there's a part of me that thinks, hey, if Jake Ferguson has, like I said, 50, 60 catches, 775 yards, 4 touchdowns, let's say he goes crazy and has 6 touchdowns, the Cowboys might offer him the 7th highest tight end paid contract in the NFL. And I don't think they should do something like that. I think it would end up being another bad contract for the Cowboys. But I guess we'll see. But I think Jake Ferguson, they're going to give him every opportunity to prove he's the guy, to make sure that he makes his mark this year. Because similar to George Pickens, he's in a contract year. And even if the Cowboys don't end up re-signing him, he can go somewhere else. They can net a compensatory pick for him, and the better year and the higher contract he has, and then the more production he has for the other team, the better compensatory pick. So we'll see what happens there. So now to move into the quarterback. So the Cowboys quarterback 3, at least to me, is clearly Will Grier. And a lot of people have been talking about Will Grier might be better than Joe Milton, and Will Grier might be the new Cooper Rush. I highly doubt that. I feel like, as we sit today, if the Cowboys had a game, and let's say in the third quarter, Dak Prescott goes down with some cramps, right? And he's cramping them so bad he can't finish the game. You know, he'll be back next week, but this week it's a wrap. And the game is, say, 27-24. Cowboys have a lead. Okay, I can see that being Will Grier going in. The head coach is familiar with Will Grier. The starting quarterback is familiar. The receiver is pretty much our entire team. So I get putting Will Grier in that scenario. But let's say Dak Prescott goes down in week 5, with a torn hamstring or, God forbid, something else severe that's going to keep him out for 8 to 10 weeks. Let's say it's not even a season-ending injury, but let's say it's going to keep him out for a couple months. At that point, I feel like you go with Joe Milton. Joe Milton has the better upside. He's more mobile. He's more athletic. And he has a better and stronger arm than Will Grier. The problem with Joe Milton is the variance, right? One day you could get, a 70-yard touchdown pass that's a freaking dart down the middle of the field to CeeDee Lamb, right on target, in between the safety and the corner. CeeDee Lamb catches it. He's running, boom, touchdown. But you could also get incompletion that's 17 yards off of where CeeDee Lamb was going to be, or you can also get an interception from the ball being thrown like a dart, but being underthrown. The safety undercuts it. Boom, ball's going the other way. So there's a variance with Joe Melton, but I, as a Cowboys fan, and hopefully as Cowboys owner, coaches, whatever, if Dak was to be out for a long period of time, you might be more apt to see what you have in Joe Melton, just to see what kind of quarterback that you traded for before you get into the draft, before you get into the off season, so that you might be able to make some more or some better decisions based on what's on your roster right now, right? So I do believe that Joe Melton, if Dak went down for an extended period of time, would be the quarterback that the Cowboys will lean on. And honestly, he has a lot of talent. And hopefully, if they develop it, which it remains to be seen if they can, he might eventually be the long-term answer for somebody like Dak Prescott retiring or moving on from you guys. So then we get to the elephant in the room. We get to Dak Prescott. So personally, I'm not necessarily a Dak Prescott fan. I'm not necessarily a Dak Prescott hater either. I was the Tony Romo guy. I was the guy that in 2016 believed that once Romo was healthy, he should have been put back in, and that the Cowboys postseason might have been a little bit different had Tony Romo be put in, right? So, but Dak comes in. He has basically one of the greatest, if not the greatest, rookie season by a quarterback ever. Since then, you've had Jaden Daniels, you've had C.J. Stroud, so you have had some other quarterbacks who are rookies who have come in and elevated their team and put them in contention for the playoffs pretty much right away. But up until that point, Dak Prescott, he put on a show. You know, he did everything that you would want him to do. But at this point, he's not the same quarterback as he was back then. He's a little bit better with his accuracy. He's a little bit better with his pocket presence. And he's a little bit better with his pre-play diagnosis at the line of scrimmage, right? But he also lacks the mobility that he did at the time. And at the time, you could kind of tell that he was making reads. And if he didn't have his read, he would take off. If he did have his read, he would just throw it. He wasn't progressing to the second, third, fourth read in the route tree because that wasn't his bag at the time. Now that is more his bag, right? But the offensive line has been a little bit more shaky over the last couple of years, so he hasn't necessarily been able to, really dig in that bag and kind of show what he's able to do in that area. So maybe this year is the perfect marriage of that, right? You got a new head coach, you got a new offensive line, you got some new offensive linemen, you got some more time for him when it comes to the middle of the pocket. You have a left tackle that's in his second year. You have a right tackle that's in his sixth year. So maybe you have a little bit more of that magic as far as, hey, Dak is not rookie Dak. Now he's a little bit more advanced, so he can come off his first read, second read, third read, maybe get to his fourth read. Maybe take off and run a little bit now that he's rehabbed from that hamstring injury, and he can, have a little bit more mobility to his game. But until I see it, I won't believe it. So he is the starter at this time, and this is the first year of that new contract. So the Cowboys are married to Dak Prescott, at least for now and next year, before anything can possibly happen with moving on from that. And with that being the case, at least this year they've went out and have gotten him a George Pickens. They've went out and have gotten him a Tyler Booker. They went out and gotten a Javonte Williams, who has a reputation as a really good third down back, and he's really good in protection. They got Jadon Blue, who is good at receiving out of the backfield. They retained Kevontae Turpin. They have a little bit of at least a high-level competition in the tight end room. So you feel much better about the offense, or at least I do, going into the season, and with that, hopes that Dak Prescott can be the best version of himself, because I do believe we only have about 2 to 3 years of Dak Prescott being able to maximize his potential, and then it needs to be time for the Cowboys to move on. If you leave it to me, they actually probably shouldn't have signed him to the contract extension at all, and just kind of let bygones be bygones this season, let him move on, go where he goes, draft the same draft that you did just now, make that same trade for Joe Melton, bring back Will Greer, and just kind of let the chips fall where they may, and whatever happens, you go into next offseason. Because I feel like the Cowboys rebuilding on the fly is always a suspect thing, right? They never quite want to be bad enough to get a high pick, but they never quite are good enough to win when it matters most. So when you have them rebuilding, they kind of more retool than rebuild, which allows them to possibly get better receivers, get a good offensive line intact, good offensive coordinator, good head coach, running back and all that stuff. And now quarterback, boom, done. Maybe when you get a rookie, maybe the team's a little bit higher level around him so that when he steps in, he doesn't necessarily have to be out there with subpar weapons, right? The weapons are pretty good, and protection's pretty good, and it kind of allows the rookie to do what he does. This is kind of what it was in 2016, right? That offensive line was pretty solid in front of Dak Prescott, and then you go out, you add Ezekiel Elliott. Okay, so now you have a solid run game, excuse me. And these are all weapons that were meant for Tony Romo, but these are also weapons that if you're a rookie, all you have to do is get the ball in their hands. These guys can make plays. These guys can make people miss in space, and I can look good by just doing the simple things and not having to do too much. Now, I hope that is the game plan for the Cowboys this year. Take it back to 2016. Make Dak Prescott play the simple game. Make Dak Prescott not have to do too much, not have to think too much. Let him hand the ball off. Get that running game going. Let Tyler Booker and Cooper Beebe and Tyler Smith fire off at the line of scrimmage and blow people off the ball and make Dak Prescott have to use play action pass. These are all things that play to his strength. I hope Schottenheimer does some of these things, but it remains to be seen, man. We gotta figure it out once training camp comes, once the season comes. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can hit me up on Twitter at jmilleriyl. That's jmiller if you like. You can also hit me up at knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. Again, knockersonthebottom@outlook.com. You can also hit me up at knockersonthebottom@gmail.com. You can also leave comments, questions below, anything specific that you want me to cover or any questions that you want me to answer. I'll take them here. I'll take them via email. I'll take them via Twitter. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Until next time, I'm your host, J Mill. J Mill if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.